Katie Beers was just 9 years old when her quiet world on Long Island turned into a living nightmare. It was December 28th, 1992, 2 days before her 10th birthday, when she vanished without a trace from Bay Shore, New York. To neighbors, she was a shy, polite little girl, small, with curious brown eyes and a soft voice that rarely spoke above a whisper. But behind closed doors, Katie's life was anything but normal. Her home was chaotic, unstable, and filled with neglect. She was often left in the care of family friends instead of her own mother. That winter afternoon, she was with John Esposito, a 43-year-old family acquaintance who'd promised to take her to an arcade for her upcoming birthday. He was the kind of man everyone in town thought was friendly, even generous, the guy who bought neighborhood kids gifts and helped fix things around the house. Katie trusted him. Everyone did. But when the night grew long and Katie didn't return home, panic spread through her small Long Island community. Esposito told police a chilling story. He claimed Katie had been snatched by a stranger in a busy parking lot. There were no witnesses, no screams, no clues. Police combed the area with helicopters, dogs, and volunteers. Flyers covered telephone poles and storefronts. For days, the name Katie Beers dominated headlines. People feared the worst. Yet beneath a quiet suburban house in Bay Shore, Katie was still there, hidden from the world, trapped in a secret prison no one even knew existed, built by the same man who claimed to be searching for her. The truth was darker than anyone dared imagine. While police scoured every inch of Long Island, the truth about Katie Beers lay hidden beneath John Esposito's garage floor, literally. Behind the man's polite smile and calm demeanor was a darkness that no one had ever seen coming. Just hours after taking her to the arcade, Esposito drove Katie not home, but to his house in Bay Shore, a modest, single-story home that looked completely ordinary from the outside. Inside, however, he had constructed something horrifying, an underground bunker, sealed beneath a trapdoor hidden under a rug. To reach it, one had to crawl through a narrow passage, climb down a ladder, and pass through a thick, metal-reinforced door that could only be opened from the outside. Inside, the air was cold and stale. The walls were bare concrete. There was a small mattress, a TV, a toilet, and a few cans of food. That was where Katie would spend the next 17 days, alone, terrified, and unsure if she would ever see daylight again. Esposito would visit her daily, pretending to care for her needs, bringing food and toys, but always controlling the light, the sound, and her every move. He told her that no one was looking for her, that her family didn't care, that she was forgotten. But Katie wasn't just a scared little girl. She was listening, learning, and memorizing. Even in captivity, her mind stayed sharp. She counted the seconds between his visits, studied how the locks clicked, and quietly plotted what she would say if she ever saw another person again. Meanwhile, outside, the world was unraveling. Police had grown suspicious of Esposito almost immediately. His story didn't add up. No witnesses had seen a kidnapping, and the surveillance near the arcade showed nothing. Detectives began watching him closely, tracking his movements and probing every word. What they didn't yet know was that the missing girl they were searching for was only a few feet below his very feet, listening to the sound of cars, footsteps, and life continuing above her head, while she sat in total darkness, praying that someone would find her. The town grew desperate. Each day that passed made her survival seem less likely. But in that hidden concrete tomb, Katie was still alive, waiting for her chance. And the cracks in Esposito's lies were beginning to show. As the days dragged on, detectives grew increasingly uneasy about John Esposito's story. At first, he had been the grieving uncle figure, offering to help with searches, handing out flyers, and even calling reporters to keep the case in the news. But the more he talked, the more his story unraveled. Investigators noticed how calm he was. Too calm for a man claiming to have witnessed a child's abduction. His version of events changed slightly each time. He couldn't describe the supposed kidnapper clearly, and there were no tire marks, no screams, no sign of a struggle at the arcade parking lot. Then came a breakthrough, a small detail Esposito overlooked. Detectives found inconsistencies in the timeline of his day, strange phone records, and receipts that placed him back home when he claimed to be helping with the search. The walls of deception were closing in, and they began to treat him not as a witness, but as the prime suspect. Back in the underground bunker, Katie Beers had no idea how close the truth was to surfacing. For 17 days, she endured total isolation. The air was thick and cold. The only light came from a small bulb Esposito controlled. He would play cartoons for her, bring her snacks, and act as though nothing was wrong. But Katie was no ordinary 9-year-old. Her intelligence and resilience were extraordinary. She spoke little, but observed everything. The way he unlocked the door, the order he turned switches, the noises that echoed from above. Katie began to use her mind as her weapon. She stayed calm, never screamed, never begged. She made Esposito believe she had accepted her fate. In reality, she was studying him, waiting for him to slip. Meanwhile, Esposito's behavior was drawing more suspicion by the hour. Detectives searched his property, but didn't initially find anything unusual. The hidden trapdoor was expertly concealed under carpeting and furniture. Yet, their gut told them something wasn't right. One of the investigators later said, "We kept circling back to Esposito. Everything led to him, even when we couldn't prove it." As the pressure mounted, the facade began to crack. Esposito grew erratic, making nervous calls, avoiding certain questions, and contradicting himself in interviews. Then one night, he broke. During an intense interrogation, Esposito finally confessed. He told investigators that Katie was alive and led them to his Bay Shore home. Officers rushed to the property, pulled back furniture, and found the trap door. When they opened it, a faint sound rose from the darkness, a small trembling voice. After 17 days of darkness, Katie Beers was found alive. The officers who lifted her from the bunker said she blinked rapidly, covering her face from the sudden light. One whispered, "You're safe now." The moment she emerged, the entire country exhaled. The miracle they had prayed for had actually happened. But the story of what she survived down there was only beginning to unfold. When Katie Beers stepped out of that underground bunker on January 13th, 1993, it was as if she had been reborn. After 17 days in a world of silence, fear, and darkness, she was suddenly surrounded by flashing lights, rushing voices, and the warmth of human contact. Police officers carefully lifted her into the daylight, their faces frozen in disbelief that the little girl they had feared was dead was standing before them, alive. She was weak, pale, and trembling. But when one detective asked if she was okay, Katie's voice was calm and clear. "I'm okay. Can I go home now?" That simple sentence shattered hearts across the nation. The news spread instantly. Missing girl found alive after 17 days underground. Crowds gathered outside the Bay Shore police station. Reporters flooded the area, and neighbors wept. But as investigators dug deeper into her story, they realized the true horror of what had been hidden beneath that quiet suburban home. The bunker was more than a hideout. It was a prison built for control. The walls were reinforced with steel, there were locks on both sides, and the ventilation was designed so that no sound escaped. Esposito had spent years constructing it, telling friends it was just a storm shelter. In reality, he had built a dungeon, waiting for the moment he'd use it. But Katie's courage inside that cell had saved her. She told police how she stayed calm, how she remembered every detail, from the number of locks to the sound of his footsteps, and how she refused to cry so he wouldn't feel he had won. Her calmness, her intelligence, even at 9 years old, stunned investigators. John Esposito was immediately arrested and charged with kidnapping. At first, he tried to plead insanity, claiming he had built the bunker to protect her. The court saw through his lies. He was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison, where he would remain until his death in 2013. For Katie, the rescue was just the beginning of another journey, one toward healing. She was placed in foster care, away from the neglect and chaos that had filled her early life. For the first time, she had structure, safety, and people who truly cared for her. In her new home, she flourished. She went back to school, rediscovered laughter, and began to rebuild a childhood stolen from her. She even later said that, as strange as it sounded, her abduction had saved her life, because it took her away from the abuse and neglect she endured before. Katie's transformation was nothing short of extraordinary. The scared little girl from Bay Shore had turned into a survivor, one whose story would inspire millions and change how missing child cases were handled across America. But behind every survivor's smile, there lingers the memory of what they endured and the quiet strength it takes to move forward. Years passed, and Katie Beers grew into a woman defined not by what happened to her, but by how she rose from it. Her story didn't end in that bunker. It began there. After her rescue, Katie was raised by a loving foster family who helped her heal and rebuild her trust in the world. She went on to graduate from college, build a successful career, and start a family of her own. But what truly set her apart was her mission. Katie chose to speak out. She began giving interviews, writing a memoir titled Buried Memories, Katie Beers' Story, and working with organizations that fight child abuse and abduction. Her voice, once silenced underground, became a tool of empowerment for thousands of survivors who saw in her the proof that healing was possible. She often said, "I don't want people to remember me as the girl who was kidnapped. I want them to remember me as the woman who survived." Her strength transformed her tragedy into a movement. Her case also reshaped how missing children investigations were handled. Police departments across the country began emphasizing rapid response, community involvement, and psychological support for victims after rescue. Katie's courage literally changed systems. As for John Esposito, he spent his remaining years behind bars until his death in 2013. Katie refused to let him define her story. His end was the closing of a chapter, but her life became a living testament to survival, resilience, and hope. Today, when people hear the name Katie Beers, they don't think of a victim locked in a bunker. They think of a survivor who walked out of the dark, lifted her head to the light, and used her story to protect others. If Katie's story moved you, don't let it stop here. Subscribe, share, and keep these stories alive, because awareness is what turns tragedy into change. Every view, every comment, every voice helps bring attention to the missing, the voiceless, and the ones still waiting to be found. Subscribe for more powerful real-life mysteries, where every story matters and every truth deserves to be told.